All right. We're learning now this excerpt from the speech that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave 30 years ago, shortly before he had a stroke that rendered him paralyzed and mute. So this is very, very important to us. And considering that we just finished learning that the Jewish people are the heart of the whole world, Jewish people doing commandments, that's what keeps the whole world going. That's why the Jewish people are called the chosen people, because God chose us to keep this world positive and dynamic and alive and holy. And the leader of the Jewish people, he's the heart of the Jewish people. In every generation, there are many, many leaders, but there's one leader that really inspires everybody, drives everybody crazy. And that's the Messiah of every generation, the Moshiach of every generation. Makes them excited for Torah, commandments, to do more than what they want to go out of their limitations, out of their comfort zones. Tries to unite all the Jewish people, tries to fight all the battles that are being fought against Judaism in the world. Encourages Torah, encourages the commandments. That's the Moshiach of every generation. In our generation, that's the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And here it is, we're learning the words of the Moshiach. So the Rebbe says that we have to learn from everything there is in the world how to serve God better. Especially for something that happens that occurs in the Torah. This week's Torah portion is an example. These two Torah readings, Vayakel and Pekude, sometimes are read together, one big long reading, and sometimes they're separate. This year they're separate. Says the Rebbe, let's look at the words. What does these mean? Vayakel and Pekude. These are two different approaches to life. Vayakel is general. Yakel, the word Vayakel means to gather everyone together. Everyone is equal. Gather all the Jewish people together. And Pekude means to count individuals, the importance of the individual. So there's a general approach to life and an individual approach to life. Usually, each one complements the other one. That's indicated when they're read together. Vayakel, Pekude, you can't have one without the other. Vayakel means a general approach to life, and Pekude means an individual approach to the details. But that's when they're together. But when they're separate, and you have Vayakel alone, it means that it must be that each one, somehow or other, is, self-sufficient. Each one contains the whole entire way of serving God. Doesn't need the other one. So sometimes if you have the proper attitude toward the generality, it includes Vayakel, that will take care of also the details also. And next week it'll be the other way. If you have a proper attitude toward the details, then that'll fix up the whole generality. Okay, so how? What does this mean to us? So the Rebbe said, okay, first of all, this coming Shabbat is another lesson we can learn from that'll shine a little bit of light on this general and specific thing we just talked about. This Shabbat is what's called Parshat Shkalim. Parshat Shkalim is always the Shabbat right before the first day of Adar. In this case, Adar Sheni, the Adar that Purim appears in. Adar Sheni, Shkalim. What's the thing of Shkalim? I showed you last week, but I think you know. Look in the very beginning of Parshas Kitisa, and it has this very, very strange commandment that God told Moses to take a half of a shekel from every person. And it says that what is a half a shekel? A half a shekel is 10 gera. Gera is a coin. Half of a shekel. That's half of a shekel is 10 gera. One full shekel is 20 gera, and you're not supposed to give a full shekel. You have to give only a half. Interestingly, it doesn't say that it's 10 shekel. It just says one full shekel is 20, and you have to give a half. It doesn't say to give 10. Says the Rebbe, why? Why doesn't it say to give 10? Let's see, be clear. What is this stressing about the half? You have to give half of a shekel. Chetzi, right? Machzis a shekel. Half of a shekel. So this is to show that a Jew, in relation to other Jews and also in relation to God, is only half. No matter what you do, the most you can do is to be a half. According to Kabbalah, the number 10 is very, very important. This is what's called the 10 sfirot, the 10 aspects of God's personality. And when it says we're created in God's image, it means we also have these 10 aspects of our personality. And of course, these aspects are enumerated and they're talked about and discussed and explained in great length in a lot of different places. They're also misunderstood in a lot of different places also, but nevertheless, it's explained in a lot of different places. Especially in Hasidut Chabad, it's explained a lot of them in great length. Suffice it to say that God has a personality and we have a personality. And part of God's personality is intellect. That's called Chachma, Bin, and Dat. Intellect and emotions, love, fear, etc. God expresses, and so do we. So that's what the Rebbe says. You should know that you are a half of a shekel. Even if you give all of the 10 aspects of your soul, the best you can be is only a half. You need other Jews. You need other Jews. You have to love your neighbor as yourself. And also in service of God, you need God. On the other hand, God, so to speak, needs us. Because that really doesn't make any sense, but that's true. God is half of the picture, and we have to do our other half. We have to do the other half. Of course, after you do your half, you realize that you really didn't do anything because God is really creating us and He's giving us it. But nevertheless, we do have free will. It's a gift from God, yes, but we have it, and we have this power of free choice. That makes us an equal partner with God. Even though that God creates us and He creates our body and He gives us life and He creates the world and He creates our free will also. But nevertheless, part of the whole picture is, even though we don't deserve it and we're actually basically nothing, but God, nevertheless, don't ask me how this works, but it does work. God makes us an equal partner. But we have to be a partner. We have to use our 10 powers of our soul in order to unite and be a partner with the 10 aspects of God. And that's therefore, and then it becomes one. Okay, that's called unity. How do we do that? Says the Rebbe, very simple. We have to surrender ourselves to the truth. Surrender yourself to the creator of the universe, and then you will be dynamic. You'll do with your hands the proper things, with your ears the proper things, your legs the proper things. You'll do good things. You'll make money, you'll get married, you'll have children, you'll be popular, you can dance, you can make music, you can do whatever you want to, but it has to be on God's terms. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't be selfish, don't be jealous, don't be lazy, don't be depressed. Huh? You have to do things on God's terms. How do you do these things? By thinking about God. If a person realizes what an amazing gift he's got of life, he'll never get depressed. I mean, he'll not for long anyway. I mean, a pure person is a person. If you realize that what a partner you've got, an amazing partner you've got, so then it's very difficult to be negative. You can still do it if you want to, but there's no point to it. How do you do this? But the first thing when you wake up in the morning, you say, Modeh Ani, I am grateful to you, God. I surrender myself totally before I have my personality, which is as I wake up in the morning, the first thing is surrendered, I am to you, God. Call on now all of this. Call on now all of this as a special connection B'shani Macharonos, in the last years, Al Vayakel means to gather together. We're seeing there's a gathering together now of Jewish people from all the world. And a lot of people are coming to the land of Israel. This is incomparable to what it was previously in the previous generations. Well, I think there's a tremendous number of people are leaving Israel, but generally speaking, it's not the religious people that are leaving Israel. Generally speaking, I'm not a statistician, whatever it's called, but nevertheless, usually the religious people come to Israel usually for, idealistic reasons. It's a holy land, it's God's land, whatever. Settle the land. It has to be refined a little bit, but nevertheless, that's the fact. Well, I hear that our rabbis of Chabad never went to the land of Israel. The land that they never left even for a meeting. One reason they never went was because it was very difficult to leave Russia. But in the time of the Tsar, you could leave. In the time of the Tsar, it was possible to leave. The time of the communists, nevertheless, all the rabbis of Chabad, they never went to Israel even to visit. Gam Nasiya, the previous Lubavitcher, that he did, yes, come to Israel. He was here for a couple of weeks. He did not come to Israel in order to settle or to come to the land of Israel. He came only to pray at the graves of the holy people here. Why? Because they wouldn't let him go back into Russia and pray at his father's grave in Rostov and in Lubavitch and other places. And especially in the year that the first letters are Taf Shin Nun Beis, Niflot Bakal. There are miracles in everything. And now we see that Jews, yes, are coming to the land of Israel. The reason the Rebbe's never left Russia was because they didn't have time. Simply, I'm not a Rebbe. I can't get inside of the mind of the Rebbe's, but the Rebbe simply never had time. They never had time. They were saving, they were protecting the Jews I remember there was the Rev Yaakov Abu Chotzera. He's buried in Egypt. His son was called the Baba Sali. His son was Rev Yisrael Abu Chotzera. He was in Israel. They had this thought, when they made peace with Egypt, they said, well, let's bring the grave of Rabbi Yaakov Abu Chotzera from Egypt, a terrible place, Egypt, and we'll bring it to the Holy Land. Right? There were big rabbis that said, let's do this. And Rev Yaakov, the Yisrael Abu Chotzera that was here, said, don't touch. He's protecting all the Jews that are there. He has to be buried there. There's a reason that he has to be there. In any case, there was a reason that the rabbis had to be there. Nevertheless, they were there, and they did not come to the land of Israel. And they didn't even the previous rabbi that did come to the land of Israel, he didn't come because of the land of Israel. He came to pray at the graves of the tzaddikim, because they wouldn't. And if they would have allowed him to go back into Russia and prayed at the graves of his father, the previous Rebbe, his father and grandfather, etc., he wouldn't have come to Israel either, I think. Even though he did, okay. What does this come to teach us from Parsha Shkalim? Is that we have to give charity. Namely, in charity, there are many levels. A person give 1/10, 1/5, 20%. Another level is everything that a person has should give in order to save his soul. Right? If a person would spend all of his money for physical cure, how much more so for spiritual cure? Well, to make this decision now in this Shabbat, also to begin like giving food or drink or similar things. There also is a teaching in this Torah portion, shkalim. Namely, you should give a half of a shekel. This is in order. What would the half of a shekel used for? One of the things that we used for this half of a shekel they gave in the temple was for these sacrifices, the communal sacrifices. What is the communal sacrifices? It's known, the explanation of the first Rebbe of Chabad on the sentence, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban lashem. A man, when he sacrifices from you, a sacrifice to God, then in order for a person should come close, sacrifice is from the word come close. Who is mikem korban lashem? From you is a sacrifice to God. Noten kol metziuto, that a person gives all of his existence to God. Yitkarev, the korban means to come close. Nowadays, you can't make sacrifices, animal sacrifices, like they did in the temple, but we do make animal sacrifices. Where? From ourselves. Everybody has an animal soul. And this animal soul is a person's nature. And you don't have to kill it. You just have to tame it. You have to make it come close to God. Korban means to sacrifice, but also means to come close. Namely, that we give all of our existence and our being, because it belongs to God anyway, to God. That's what we said in the morning. You wake up in the morning, you say, Modeh Ani. You say, from this it's understood what of an action. That when we give charity and we do Gemilut Chasedim, we do acts of kindness, it has to be in a way that you put in your charity and your acts of kindness all 10 powers of your soul. What does it mean, 10 powers of your soul? That when you give to a person, you're actually concerned totally with the welfare of that person. His physical welfare, his emotional welfare, say a nice word to him, give a nice feeling to him. In addition to actually doing, you also have to think and to speak similarly pleasant thoughts and speech about this person. Believe it or not, thoughts really have a tremendous effect. Thoughts are very, very, how do you say, potent in this world. All you days by means of this, Mezarzim, we hasten the arrival of the future redemption, that it should come immediately, and then God will be, he will be the one that's giving charity. He will give charity, and he will gather all the Jewish people, like it says, Kahal Gadol Yeshuva Hena. It says a big congregation, all the Jewish people return back to the Holy Land, to Israel. Okay, that is the little bit that we have of the speech that the Rebbe gave. I'd like to do a little bit more. Let's just 1 second here. Let us stop the share. And 1 minute, let's stop the recording also.